Holding a rosary before you fall asleep is not a small gesture, nor is it a casual habit meant simply to soothe the mind or calm the nerves. It is an act of deep spiritual warfare, a silent declaration in the night that your soul belongs to God and that your heart is under the mantle of the Blessed Mother. In the stillness of the darkness, the rosary becomes more than beads, more than prayers, more than tradition. It becomes a shield, a fortress, a quiet, invincible proclamation of faith that echoes through the spiritual realm with a resonance the devil fears. The night has always been a mysterious hour. It is the time when the world grows silent, when our senses soften, and when our souls are most exposed to the whisper of eternity. The day distracts us with its noise, its movement, its responsibilities, but the night strips us of illusions. In that solitude, we see ourselves more clearly, the fragility of our hearts, the wounds we carry, the temptations we battle, the longing we hide. It is precisely at that hour that the evil one loves to attack, because he thrives in darkness, in fatigue, in loneliness, in fear. But when your fingers curl around the rosary and your spirit leans into prayer, the night is no longer his domain. It becomes holy ground. The devil hates the rosary because it is the prayer of the humble. He hates humility. He hates obedience. He hates love. The rosary is woven from all three. When you hold it before you fall asleep, you are saying without words, I belong to God. I seek His mercy. I cling to His mother. I reject the lies of darkness. Nothing frustrates the enemy more than a soul who refuses to sleep unguarded. Nothing terrifies him more than a believer who understands that spiritual battles are won not through power, not through noise, not through dramatic gestures, but through quiet, faithful perseverance in prayer. As your hand closes around the rosary, heaven draws close. Angels recognize the sound of those beads. Saints rejoice when they see a soul entrusting their rest to Mary. God Himself inclines His ear toward the whisper that rises from your heart. But the devil trembles. He remembers every defeat delivered to him through those mysteries, the Annunciation that shattered his pride, the Nativity that revealed God made flesh, the cross that vanquished him forever, the resurrection that sealed his doom, the coronation of Mary that crowned his eternal defeat. Every Hail Mary is like a stone flung at the serpent. Every decade is like a chain that binds him. Every mystery you contemplate is a light in the darkness he cannot extinguish. Prayer before sleep is a holy surrender, but holding the rosary elevates that surrender into an act of trust. It is saying, Lord, while I sleep, you battle for me. It is saying, Mother, keep watch with me in the night. It is saying, I am not afraid, because I rest in the presence of God. The devil cannot approach such a soul without being burned by the flame of grace that surrounds it. He hates the rosary because he knows its power even when we feel nothing. He fears its effectiveness even when our minds wander. He trembles before it because he knows that Mary, the humble Virgin, crushes his head every time a believer invokes her with sincerity. The modern world has forgotten how to pray. It has forgotten silence, reverence, self-surrender. It has forgotten that battles are not won by technology, but by grace, not by comfort, but by sacrifice, not by human strength, but by the mercy of God. When you hold the rosary at night, you step outside the illusion of the world and into the eternal truth, that your soul is engaged in a war for holiness. And in that war, your greatest weapon is prayer. Imagine a believer at the end of a long day. The body is tired, the mind is restless, worries swirl, memories surface, Regrets press against the heart. The future seems uncertain. The past seems heavy. In that vulnerable moment, the enemy loves to sow fear, discouragement, confusion, temptation. But then the hand reaches for the rosary. The beads slip between the fingers, familiar and comforting. The cross rests against the palm, and suddenly something changes. The soul becomes anchored. The storm begins to calm. A peace begins to descend. Not the peace of the world, but the peace that comes from knowing you are not alone. The rosary is the chain that ties your soul to heaven. It reminds you that God is near, even in the silence. It reminds you that Mary is a mother, even in your weakness. It reminds you that grace flows, even in your fatigue. And when the devil sees that chain, he flees. For he knows that the soul who clings to Mary is beyond his grasp. But holding the rosary before sleep is not only a defense, it is a preparation. It is training the heart to end each day in the presence of God. Too many people fall asleep with their hearts tangled in anxiety or screens or meaningless distractions. They close their eyes with no thought of eternity, no surrender to grace, no acknowledgement of God's love. But the believer who holds the rosary before bed says, "My last thought will be of you, Lord. My last whisper will be a prayer. My final gesture before sleep will be an act of love." Transforms the night. It transforms sleep. It transforms the soul. The devil hates the rosary because it purifies the imagination. In the quiet of the night, our imaginations often wander into dangerous paths, fears, fantasies, lies, memories, distortions. These become entry points for temptation. But the rosary fills the imagination with holy images: the humility of Mary, the silence of Nazareth, the tenderness of Bethlehem, the suffering of Calvary, the glory of Easter. Such images act like lamps in the darkness. The enemy cannot manipulate a soul whose imagination is grounded in the mysteries of Christ. He hates the rosary because it awakens the virtues he tries hardest to destroy. The rosary teaches patience with every bead. It teaches faith with every repetition. It teaches contemplation with every mystery. It teaches perseverance with every decade. These virtues form a wall around the soul, a wall the devil cannot climb. When you hold the rosary before bed, you are telling God, "I choose you even in my tiredness." And God cherishes that gesture more than we can comprehend. He is not impressed by perfect words or eloquence. He is moved by the heart that turns to him in weakness. The rosary is a prayer of the simple, the poor, the weary, the wounded. And that is why it is one of heaven's most beloved prayers. There is something deeply beautiful about ending the day with the rosary. It is like taking your heart with all its burdens and placing it gently into Mary's hands. It is like saying, "Mother, I am too tired to fight tonight. Hold me, pray for me, protect me, lead me to your Son." And she does. She never neglects the soul who calls upon her. She never abandons the child who reaches for her. She never fails to intercede. The devil hates her. He hates her purity, her humility, her obedience, her motherhood. He hates that God chose her. He hates that she is the new Eve. He hates that she is the queen crowned in heaven. But most of all, he hates that she obtains graces for her children. Graces he can never steal. Graces that strengthen souls. Graces that sanctify hearts. When you hold the rosary before bed, you surround yourself with the power of the mother who crushes his head. In the night, when everything is still, your soul belongs entirely to God. There is no noise to distract you, no work to keep you busy, no conversations to pull your attention away. All that remains is the quiet dialogue between your heart and your Creator. Holding the Rosary at that moment shapes your final thoughts, those final thoughts which often reveal the true state of your soul. If you end the day with resentment, resentment grows. If you end with fear, fear multiplies. If you end with worldly concerns, they tighten their grip. But if you end the day with prayer, prayer becomes your companion. If you end with gratitude, gratitude blooms. If you end with trust, trust deepens. If you end with Mary, she accompanies you through the night. The devil hates losing the night. He hates when a believer sanctifies the hours he believes he controls. But a child of God can transform the night into a temple simply by holding a rosary. When you hold the rosary before sleep, your guardian angel rejoices. He understands what is happening in the spiritual realm. He knows that the soul is protected, that grace is active, that the devil is frustrated. Angels love the rosary because it honors God and glorifies His plan of salvation. They draw near to a soul in prayer like bees to a flower, and they remain close through the night because the rosary invites their presence. This world needs believers who understand such prayer. The modern culture teaches people to fear the night, to drown silence with noise, to avoid reflection, to flee contemplation. But the Christian is called to face the night with courage, with peace, with confidence. The Rosary is the key that unlocks that confidence. It tells the devil, I walk through darkness without fear, because I walk with the Mother of Light. There is a profound reason why so many saints held the Rosary as they fell asleep. Not because they were trying to earn grace, but because they understood the fragility of the human soul. They knew the night can be a battlefield where temptations intensify, where desolation intensifies, where spiritual fatigue weakens the heart. They knew the devil loves to whisper discouragement when we are most tired, and they knew that the Rosary silences him. The devil hates silence because God speaks in silence. He hates repetition because repetition forms habit, and holy habits become virtues. He hates contemplation because contemplation reveals truth, and truth destroys lies. The Rosary contains all three, and so he hates it. But the believer who holds the Rosary before bed embodies all three, and so he fears that believer. When you hold the Rosary, you join yourself to centuries of Christians, soldiers, farmers, mothers, kings, children, saints, who prayed the same prayers, held the same beads, fought the same battles. You enter a lineage of faith that stretches through history like a golden chain linking souls to heaven. This chain has survived wars, persecutions, diseases, revolutions, and every attempt of hell to silence prayer. The Rosary has never been defeated because heaven refuses to let go of the souls who cling to it. There is a serenity that descends when the Rosary rests against your chest as you drift to sleep. This serenity is not emotional comfort. It is the peace that comes from handing over your life to God. It is the peace that comes from trusting that Mary covers you with her mantle. It is the peace that comes from knowing that the devil cannot enter the heart filled with prayer, even imperfect prayer. It is the peace that comes from grace. Holding a rosary before sleep is not a superstition, not a ritual devoid of meaning, not an empty custom. It is an act of faith. It is an act of love. It is an act of surrender. It is an act of battle. And every night you perform this simple gesture, your soul becomes stronger, your heart becomes calmer, your faith becomes deeper. Every night you grip those beads, you declare once again that darkness has no claim over you. Every night you fall asleep with the rosary near, You remind the devil that you belong to a mother he can never defeat and to a God he can never overcome. The devil hates it, but heaven smiles. If you want, I can also create a shorter version, a more poetic version, or a more intense spiritual warfare style version. You said, continue speech. ChatGPT said, Bar Elo is a continuation in the same voice, intensity and spiritual depth, extending the speech naturally. O headings, no conclusion, no mention of the Cardinal Robert, as the uninterrupted flow of the same contemplative, powerful tone. Night is a mystical hour, and every soul feels it, whether consciously or not. The darkness carries a weight, a silence that presses gently yet insistently on the heart. For some, it is peaceful, for others, it is unsettling. But for the believer who holds the Rosary, the night becomes a sacred corridor through which grace flows gently into the soul. The beads become your lighthouse, keeping your heart anchored when waves of anxiety, memories, or fears rise unexpectedly. And the devil, who waits patiently for moments of vulnerability, recoils the instant he sees a soul defend itself with the weapon he despises most. Here are nights when sleep does not come easily, nights when the mind refuses to quiet down, when thoughts race, when regrets resurface, when the future seems uncertain, nights when the soul feels restless, wounded, or heavy with unspoken burdens. And yet precisely in those nights, the Rosary held in trembling hands becomes a lifeline, one that heaven recognizes with tenderness. Some prayers are spoken from strength, others are whispered from weakness. But heaven listens to both with equal love. The devil, however, understands that the prayers whispered from weakness are often the ones that destroy him most, because they are born from humility, and humility blinds him. Sometimes you may not even have the energy to pray the entire Rosary. Perhaps fatigue weighs you down, perhaps sorrow tightens your chest, perhaps distractions cloud your mind. But do not underestimate the power of simply holding the beads, even without speaking a single word. Your silent grasp confesses faith. It says, Lord, I cannot do much tonight, but I can hold on to you. It says, Mother, be near me as I rest. It says, I do not abandon prayer, even when I am too weak to fight. The devil hates that humility more than perfect eloquence. He hates a soul that refuses to give up. He hates the believer who clings to light even when surrounded by darkness. If only you could see for a single moment what happens in the unseen world when a soul holds a rosary before bed. If only your eyes could glimpse the spiritual battle that unfolds when heaven draws near to defend you. You would never again let the night find you without those beads. Angels surround the soul, demons retreat, grace descends like dew upon the heart. Mary stands beside you as a mother stands beside a sleeping child, guarding, blessing, watching with a love that cannot be measured. And God, in His infinite tenderness, pours peace into the crevices of your heart where fear once hid. The world often tells you that faith is complicated, that whole lines is out of reach, that prayer requires perfect concentration or emotion. But the Rosary before sleep destroys that lie. Holiness begins with small gestures offered with love. God does not demand extraordinary feats. He delights in the simple offering, the tired hand reaching for the beads, the weary heart whispering one last prayer before sleep, the soul choosing light rather than surrendering to the weight of the world. The devil hates simplicity because simplicity belongs to God. It is the humble who triumph, not the powerful. There is a deep spiritual mystery hidden in falling asleep with a rosary in your hand. Sleep is an image of death, Waking is a symbol of resurrection. To end the day with prayer is to say, if this night were my last, let my final act be a gesture of love toward God. To wake with the Rosary near you is to begin the day with a gentle reminder that grace accompanied you through the night. The devil hates this rhythm of grace. He hates that prayer sanctifies both the ending and the beginning. He hates that the believer who holds a Rosary in the night wakes with a fortified soul. Every saint understood this truth. Some died with the Rosary in their hands. Others prayed it in their final breath. They knew that this prayer, so simple and so profound, is a chain that binds the soul to heaven. They knew it is a fountain of peace, a source of strength, a refuge in the storms of life. They knew that Mary never abandons the child who turns to her with sincerity. And they knew that the devil flees from the presence of a soul held close to the Mother of God. The world mocks such devotion. It mocks simplicity, purity, reverence. But heaven honors it, heaven crowns it, heaven multiplies its grace. The devil sees the mockery of the world and rejoices because it keeps souls away from the power that could save them. But when he sees a believer take the hour, Rosary in the quiet of the night, he is reminded that there are souls who will not be deceived, souls who choose silence over noise, souls who choose prayer over distraction, souls who choose God over the world. And these souls are the ones who deal him his greatest defeats. As the night deepens and your breathing slows, the Rosary resting against your chest becomes like a small heartbeat of faith. Each beat seems to whisper a truth the devil hates, that you are loved, that you belong to God, that your life has meaning, that your soul is protected. Even if your mind wanders, even if your emotions fluctuate, the physical presence of the Rosary is like a banner lifted over you. It proclaims your identity, it marks your territory, it declares your allegiance. Never underestimate the power of symbols in the spiritual life. The cross, the sacred images, the holy water, the Rosary, these are not mere objects. They carry the breath of faith, the memory of nations of believers, the devotion of centuries. The Rosary has been kissed by dying martyrs, grasped by soldiers in trenches, clutched by mothers praying for their children, held by monks in the silence of the night, treasured by the poor and the forgotten. When you hold it before sleep, you join this great multitude, and the devil recognizes the strength of that communion. Sometimes the nights of life feel unbearably long. Nights of loneliness, nights of grief, nights of confusion, nights of illness, nights of doubt. These nights stretch the soul and test your endurance. In such times, the Rosary becomes more than a prayer. It becomes a companion. Its rhythm calms the heart. Its mysteries bring light. Its simplicity comforts. Its repetition steadies the breath. And as you hold it before sleep, you discover that you are not alone in the darkness. God is there. Mary is there. Grace is there. The devil hates this discovery. Most of all, that suffering united with prayer becomes strength. That tears offered to God become pearls of grace. That weakness entrusted to Mary becomes a path to victory. He wants you to believe that suffering isolates you, that darkness is final, that pain is meaningless. But the Rosary held in the night exposes his life. It reveals that even sorrow can be sanctified, even fear transformed, even silence filled with God. And so, night after night, the believer who holds the Rosary continues a quiet revolution against the dominion of darkness. This revolution is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is not seen by the world. But it shakes the foundations of hell. For every soul that ends the day with prayer closes another door the enemy tries to open. Every child of God who entrusts the night to Mary frustrates the plans of the wicked one. Every whispered Hail Mary is a blow against the kingdom of lies. The devil hates this, but heaven loves it. If you want, I can continue even further with the same tone, adding more depth, more imagery, and more spiritual intensity. You said, continue speech. ChatGPT said, bar. Air is a seamless continuation of the same speech, same tone, same spiritual weight, same contemplative depth, bar. O headings. No conclusion, no mention of the cardinal, bar. In lie the uninterrupted flow of a powerful mystical reflection. End day. As the night stretches onward, something profound begins to unfold inside the soul that clings to the Rosary. A clarity emerges, not always seen, but always felt. It is the quiet awareness that you are sheltered, that even in your vulnerability, you are not abandoned. The Rosary becomes like a soft torch glowing in your hands, illuminating the shadows that once frightened you. The enemy hates this illumination. He thrives only confusion and darkness. And when your hand holds the Rosary, your mind slowly, gently begins to align with God's light. Even if you fall asleep before finishing the prayer, heaven completes what your human frailty cannot. Even if the words fade into dreams, the intentions echo still. Even if the beads slip from your hand in the night, their grace lingers like the scent of incense long after Mass has ended. The devil hates this divine generosity because he cannot understand a love that finishes the prayer of the weary, that crowns the effort of the weak, that perfects what is offered imperfectly. There are countless souls across the world who hold their rosaries at night, children learning faith for the first time, elderly believers offering their last years to God, parents exhausted from the battles of life, the lonely seeking comfort, the wounded seeking healing, the repentant seeking mercy. When these souls hold their rosaries, heaven sees them not as isolated individuals, but as one great family, united in prayer across time and space. This unity is another reason the devil hates the Rosary. It binds believers into a single army, one he has no hope of defeating. To hold a Rosary is to remember that you are part of something infinitely larger than yourself. You are connected to the mysteries of Christ's life. You are connected to Mary's Immaculate Heart. You are connected to the communion of saints. You are connected to every soul who has ever whispered these prayers. The devil, who tries to isolate every soul he targets, despises this connection. When you hold the Rosary before sleep, you shatter his illusion that you are alone. Prayer has a rhythm, and the Rosary's rhythm is one of the most beautiful ever given to humanity. As your fingers move along the beads, your mind begins to breathe with God's breath. Your heart begins to beat with the calm of heaven. Your spirit begins to relax under the mantle of Mary. This rhythm is not a mechanical repetition, it is a speed, a ritual heartbeat that aligns you with the mystery of grace. The devil hates this alignment because it brings order where he wants chaos, peace where he wants turmoil, clarity where he wants confusion. There are nights when you feel spiritually dry, when the Rosary feels heavy in your hand, when the words feel empty. Do not be discouraged. Such nights are among the holiest. The devil hates when you pray without consolation because he knows those prayers pierce heaven with greater force than the prayers offered in comfort. When you pray despite dryness, your love is purified, your faith is strengthened, your humility deepens. These virtues are unbearable to the enemy. And so he tries to whisper, "You are too tired. This prayer is too long. It does nothing. You prayed yesterday, skip it tonight. God isn't listening. This is meaningless." He whispers these lies because he fears what happens when you ignore them. He fears the soul that persists. He fears the soul that chooses Mary's hand in the darkness. He fears the soul that grips those beads and refuses to let go. But something else happens, something subtle yet powerful, when you choose prayer in your fatigue. The Rosary begins to reshape the interior landscape of your heart. It softens the areas hardened by resentment. It heals the memories twisted by pain. It calms the fears that distort your perception. It opens the windows of the soul so that the light of God enters more freely. This transformation does not always feel dramatic or visible, but it is real. Every bead, every mystery, every repetition chisels the soul into something more radiant, more peaceful, more aligned with the divine. The devil hates this transformation because it is irreversible. Once a soul begins to taste true peace, false pleasures lose their appeal. Once a heart experiences the quiet strength of prayer, superficial distractions lose deep air power. Once someone learns to fall asleep holding the Rosary, the devil loses one of his most common avenues of attack, the unguarded night. When you hold the Rosary close, you are placing a spiritual sword by your pillow. You are not merely protecting yourself, you are training your soul. You are forming a habit that shapes the deepest parts of your being. You are building a spiritual instinct that will guide you not only in the night but in the battles of the day. Prayer before sleep is like planting seeds that will bloom in the light of morning. Grace often works silently, like a seed germinating beneath the soil. You do not see its progress, but it rises. It strengthens. It grows. And one day, you realize that you have become someone different. Not because of one dramatic moment, but because of countless nights of quiet prayer. You find yourself calmer in trials, more patient in suffering, more gentle in interactions, more hopeful in discouragement. These changes are the fruit of the nights when you held the Rosary half asleep, unaware of how much heaven was shaping you. The devil hates such growth because it makes your soul a threat. A peaceful soul disarms his attacks. A hopeful soul undermines his lies. A humble soul escapes his traps. A prayerful soul defeats him before he even begins his assault. When a believer holds a Rosary before bed, the devil sees not just a nightly ritual, but a soul being fortified night after night, year after year. There is a tenderness in God's response to the believer who ends the day with the Rosary. He sees the tiredness, the fragility, the imperfections. He sees the struggles you endured during the day, the quiet sacrifices no one noticed, the inner battles no one understood. He sees the mistakes, the victories, the wounds, and the hopes. And when you come to Him at night with the Rosary in your hand, He receives all of with fatherly love. The devil hates this tenderness because he has no access to it. He knows only accusation, never mercy. Mary too watches with a mother's heart. When she sees her child reaching for the Rosary before sleep, she bends close. She knows the fears you do not speak. She knows the pain you hide. She knows the sins you regret, the dreams you hold, the wounds you carry. The Rosary is her invitation to draw near, to cover you in her mantle, to bless your rest. The devil hates her nearness because he knows what her presence does. It brings purity to the impure, hope to the despairing, strength to the weary, protection to the vulnerable. Every night becomes a victory when you end it with the Rosary, not because you prayed perfectly, but because you chose God, chose Mary, chose grace, chose light, chose humility, chose the path that hell cannot follow. If you want, I can continue with more depth, more imagery, or extend the speech to any length you desire. You said, continue speech. ChatGPT said, Bar, air is a direct continuation of the same speech, same tone, same depth, same spiritual weight, bar O headings. No conclusion, no mention of the Cardinal USD seamless continuation da ND. As the night deepens further, the rosary in your hand becomes a silent testament of trust, something the devil cannot bear to witness. Trust is the virtue he fears most, because trust binds the soul to God with an unbreakable bond. When you hold the rosary as sleep approaches, you are saying without words, I trust you with my rest. I trust you with my dreams. I trust you with my fears. I trust you with my weakness. Hell has no antidote for such trust. It is a fortress built not of stone, but of surrender. And surrender is impregnable because it belongs entirely to God. Very soul needs moments of surrender, especially at day's end. The world demands so much. Burdens pile up. Our responsibilities weigh heavily. Relationships strain the heart, and interior battles drain the spirit. There is something deeply healing about ending the day under the mantle of prayer. Holding the rosary is like handing over all the unresolved chapters of your day to Mary, trusting that she will bring them to her Son. Nothing is wasted when handed to her, not even your mistakes, not even your misunderstandings, not even your tears. The devil hates this because he wants your wounds to remain open and infected, not healed. The rosary before sleep is like a gentle purification of the heart. It washes away the dust your soul collected throughout the day. It clears the fog of confusion. It calms the turbulence of emotions. It turns your gaze from the world back to God, from anxiety back to faith, from exhaustion back to hope. Even if your prayer consists of only a few whispered words or a single decade before your eyes close, that moment shapes everything. It marks the boundary between the chaos of the day and the peace of the night. The devil hates boundaries. He loves when day and night bleed into each other with no spiritual distinction. He loves when people carry their anger into sleep, their bitterness into dreams, their temptations into the silence of the night. But the rosary refuses to allow this blending. It separates light from darkness, surrender from exhaustion, grace from temptation. In a world that feels increasingly blurred, this separation becomes a gift, a clarity, a breath of fresh air in the dusty corridors of the soul. As your fingers gently roll the beads, your breathing slows, and the body finds rest not only because it is tired, but because the soul within it is being soothed by grace. Even science recognizes that the rhythmic repetition of prayer calms the nervous system, lowers stress, and brings peace. But what science cannot measure is the SP, irritual peace that descends, the grace that envelops the soul like a warm blanket. This is the peace the devil fears most, because once a soul tastes it, no counterfeit peace can satisfy it again. There is a reason spiritual attack often comes at night. The devil knows that the night amplifies thoughts, magnifies fears, and exposes weakness. That is why he prowls around the edges of a weary soul, waiting for its guard to lower. But when you hold the rosary before bed, that guard stays lifted. The devil approaches, sees the beads, sees Mary's presence, sees heaven's nearness, and recoils. Sometimes grace in the night is subtle. You may not feel anything. You may feel distracted. Your mind may wander. You may even fall asleep mid-prayer. But grace is not a feeling, it is a reality. It is working whether you sense it or not. Heaven is active even when you are exhausted. God is listening even when you are drifting. Mary is watching even when your eyes close. The devil hates this hidden work. He hates that God gives grace without requiring perfection. He hates that Mary protects even the half-asleep prayer of a tired child. He hates that your littleness is not a barrier, but a doorway. The rosary held at night is one of the purest forms of love, because it is love offered without witnesses, without applause, without emotion, without strength, love offered in fragility. God treasures this love. The devil fears it. He knows that a soul who turns to God in weakness is a soul he has already lost. He prefers a soul who prays only when strong, only when inspired, only when comfortable. But the soul who prays in the dark, with trembling hands and weary mind, that soul is unreachable to him. And there is something else he fears. The rosary is not your prayer alone. It is Mary's prayer as well. Every Hail Mary is not merely your voice. It is her voice echoing through yours. Every mystery is not merely your contemplation. It is her memory guiding your imagination. You are not praying alone. The devil hates this partnership. He hates that your weak prayer becomes powerful when united with the Queen of Heaven. He hates that your whispered Hail Marys become like thunder in the spiritual realm because she magnifies them. The night is transformed when heaven is invited into it. You may be lying in a simple bed, in a quiet room, in the stillness of your home, but spiritually something majestic is taking place. When you hold the rosary, that small space becomes like a sanctuary. Angels gather, grace descends, the Mother of God draws close, the devil is banished. There is a holiness in that moment that goes unnoticed by the world but is celebrated by heaven. There will be nights when fear tries to creep into your mind, fear of the future, fear of loss, fear of sickness, fear of loneliness. But holding a rosary is like placing your fear in the hands of someone who knows how to turn fear into trust. Mary does not erase fear by force, she melts it by presence. The devil hates this gentle melting. He prefers fear to remain sharp and cold, stabbing the soul. But when the rosary is held, fear becomes something softer, something that cannot take root, something that loses its power to torment. And there will be nights when sadness presses against you, when memories return uninvited, when regrets ache like old wounds, when grief sits heavy on the chest. The rosary in such moments becomes a balm. Its repetition steadies your heart. Its mysteries remind you that even sorrow has a place in God's plan, that Christ himself entered sorrow, sanctified it, transformed it. The devil hates this transformation because he wants sorrow to lead to despair, not redemption. Then there are nights when joy fills the heart, when gratitude overflows, when blessings are immense. Add one by one. The rosary becomes a song of thanksgiving. Heaven delights in such joy offered through prayer, and the devil hates joy that is rooted in God because it makes the soul radiant, luminous, unreachable to shadows. And as night follows night, the habit deepens. What begins as a simple gesture becomes a spiritual instinct. You begin to feel incomplete if the rosary is not near you before sleep. Not out of superstition, but because the soul recognizes where it finds peace. The body recognizes where it finds rest. The heart recognizes where it finds love. The devil hates such instinct because instinct forms virtue and virtue forms saints. If you would like, I can continue even further, extending the speech with more spiritual imagery, depth, and power. You said, powerful ending. ChatGPT said, bar. Here is a powerful ending for your speech, written in the same tone and spiritual intensity as before, without mentioning any specific figure, bar, ND. So, my dear friend, tonight, yes, tonight, when the world grows quiet and darkness tries once more to stretch its cold fingers toward your thoughts. Do not let your heart drift into sleep unarmed. Lift that humble chain of beads. Feel its weight, light yet filled with eternity. Hold it firmly, not as a decoration, not as a relic from your childhood, but as a sign of a covenant between you and heaven. Let every bead resting in your hand whisper a truth the enemy cannot bear. You do not belong to him, you belong to God. Hold your rosary with the confidence of someone who has discovered the secret pathway through the night. Hold it with the courage of someone who refuses to fall asleep defeated. Hold it as a soldier grips his weapon, as a child holds his mother's hand, as a dying man clings to hope. Because each bead is an anchor thrown into the very heart of God. Each Hail Mary is a flame lit in defiance of the shadows. Each gentle breath of prayer is an earthquake in hell. And when you lay your head on your pillow, let the rosary rest against your chest like a shield, like a silent sentinel keeping watch while you sleep. Know that angels stand guard around you when heaven hears your whispered surrender. Know that the Mother of Christ walks through your room like a gentle fire, touching your fears and turning them into peace. Know that the devil, who prowls like a thief in the darkness, finds the door to your soul barred, not by your strength, but by your trust. Let the enemy tremble that you have understood something he hoped you would never see. That holiness is not built in grand gestures, but in the humble fidelity of a child who prays before sleep. That God pours his greatest graces not into the powerful, but into the hearts that kneel in the hidden silence of the night. That the rosary, prayed with love, prayed with confidence, prayed with surrender, is a chain that the devil cannot break. Tonight, hold your rosary like a declaration of war. Hold it like a banner of victory. Hold it as if heaven itself is watching, because it is. Hold it as if the Mother of God places her mantle over your shoulders, because she does. Hold it with the certainty that nothing pursued with humility and prayer will ever be lost, and nothing surrendered to God before sleep will ever return to you empty. Sleep with the rosary in your hand and let the devil hate it. Let him fear it. Let him rage against it. Because every night you fall asleep with those beads between your fingers is another night heaven claims you again, and darkness loses a battle it thought it could win. And may your final whisper before your eyes close be this simple offering: Mother, stay with me. Jesus, take my heart. Father, guard my soul. Then rest, beloved child of God. The night no longer belongs to the enemy. It belongs to grace. And grace always wins.